Yo, what's good, people? Rasati out here in Singapore. Thank you so much for joining me on the Night Owl podcast. You guys, I have been mulling over one specific situation all day because I had a conversation with a client recently and it made me rethink some of the memories that I have as I was growing up. So, for those of you who don't know, obviously, I grew up for the majority of my teenagerdom in the US, and I had the typical Western upbringing in so much as I went to high school, graduated, got to college, and lived on campus rather than live from home. Whereas here in Singapore, you don't have that option. So in the US, I lived on campus for 4 years of my degree, and then I extended for another year as a dorm director. So when I wasn't ready to go and enter the rat race and start getting a job and getting an apartment and stuff, I was afraid of all of the bills. So what I did instead was kind of ease myself into that situation, and I found a way to stay on campus where I already had room and board and make a little extra money by being the residence director. So I was in charge of 108 girls, and it was a chance for me to kind of learn to manage my time when I didn't have classes, to figure out what I wanted to do next, and to learn to pay bills. So I figured this was the best way for me to kind of adult slowly instead of jumping in full force, both legs into the water in the deep end and try my best not to run home to mom and dad because I was struggling. So I did this, and it worked out well for me because I was able to be in charge of my own food and cooking it if I wanted to, which I already did in college a little bit. Being in charge of taking care of other people and attending to my duties within the school and within the dorm itself. And then obviously, because I had some time on my hands, I went and picked up another job. So I actually ended up working at the retirement community, Bridgewater Retirement Community, as the assistant to the director of the vice president of human resources at the time. And I got some real world hands-on experience. It was an internship, so I wasn't actually paid for it. But what they did do instead was fund my professional human resources management certification through Villanova University. So that was amazing. That was my very first online certification program that I took, and I felt really good about it because now I had this added skill set of how to manage people, so that if I were to ever get into a corporate position, I would be able to do that as well. So not only did I have hands-on training in human resources, I was managing human resources in a dorm setting, and also I had the certification. So that worked for me. I was able to kind of be away from all of my family influences and start to make decisions for myself. And I think that was the biggest plus by living on my own for a little while. Now, the first time I moved into an apartment was with my boyfriend at the time. And so I didn't do it by myself. I did it with somebody because, you share the financial burden then. And I was able to figure out what I wanted in a relationship. And I wasn't sure if I was ready for married life, and luckily for me, we dated all through college anyway. So we had already in like a 4-year relationship. We moved in together after I'd taken a year off from school and done the dorm director thing. And what I realized a lot was I had no problem working. I'm kind of a workaholic. I have no problem paying my bills. I had to learn how to spend carefully. That was something that I needed to learn because I was living from paycheck to paycheck, which unfortunately a lot of us do, but it's a skill set that you need to develop or have the need to develop so that you make sure that you figure out some stuff. So what I learned from my now ex-fiance was the fact that if I take the money that I'm going to save out first before I spend anything, that means the money's going to go into an account quietly, like a direct deposit or whatever, as soon as my paycheck hits, and then I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to keep track of how much money there is. I don't have to worry about whether I've saved any money or not. It's there when I need it, just quietly accumulating, right? And I felt good about that. The other thing I also learned is the fact that when I need to have my own space and when I want to have company, and how to articulate that, which unfortunately that relationship did not work out so well, and hence we ended up breaking up. But the point is, these are things that I needed to learn for myself about what I needed personally. I loved working. I loved throwing myself into work, and a lot of times that was my escape from my own problems because when I'm at work, I'm kind of necessary. I'm kind of important. People actually look up to me or need my work. I had worked myself into a position of being irreplaceable, okay? Not only did I find out the hard way that I was very, very replaceable, but I did my best to become the go-to person, the important person, the main cog in the wheel, so to speak. And I felt good about that. But what I didn't do was manage the social aspect of my life very well. I didn't have one. If it wasn't with my then fiance, I was at work. And it wasn't like I was out with my work buddies after work either. It was just during work. And I would stay late at the office all the time and then come home and then, cook and clean and do what I got to do at home. And that was pretty much it. So my social skills at the time were not very good, but I had to learn to manage that. My work-life balance, kind of non-existent because it was tilted more to the work side of things. And I felt like this is the best way for me to make money. I, at that time, was salaried at a low amount, hourly. Sorry. I was hourly at a low amount, and when I wanted extra money, all I had to do was go in and punch the clock for a couple more hours, and like extra hours. So I was able to make more money that way. It's very different when you're salaried because there is no way to make extra money. There's no way that you can kind of clock in and clock out, do overtime, none of that stuff. So I learned about overtime very, very quickly, and that's part of the reason that I was in a position where I was just working all the time. I enjoyed it because it meant money in my pocket. But fast forward a little bit later, and I found out that that's not the most important thing. So when I got married, I realized that running a household is indeed a lot more stressful. And at the time, I took care of everything but the rent. See, in my first relationship, we split everything right down the middle. So I gave him a lump sum at the once my paycheck hit, I gave him a lump sum and he took care of everything else. So everything was direct deposited from his account. I just gave him the lump sum amount that was my half, and then everything was taken care of. Nothing else I needed to worry about. So then groceries were on me. You know what I mean? In my marriage, though, everything was direct deposited from my account. So everything had to come out of my account immediately, and he just had to pay the rent, which he had a direct arrangement with the landlord that we were renting the house from. So the burden, unfortunately, was on me. And because we had never actually spoken about finances, I didn't know how to manage it when I needed to ask for help. And he would respond with, no, I can't, or I need to take a mental note of all the money you're asking for. So we never had that financial conversation. And because I wasn't sure of how to manage things on my own without an added responsibility of a fiance or a husband or children, even for that matter, it became one of those points of communication that I really had a tough time with and actually added to our downfall, so to speak. So for me, right, when I look back at my life and I'm considering all of the things, all the experiences that have shaped me, I'm actually really grateful for the fact that I had a lot of time away from home for me to kind of stretch my wings and figure out what I can and can't do, what I'm capable of, what my strengths are, what my weaknesses are, and kind of work on it from there. Finances have never been a strong suit for me. I've always known that I can always make more money, but that means that I haven't really learned how to watch my spending carefully. Now, I go through phases where I don't spend anything at all, and I feel really good about the fact that I didn't spend anything at all. And then I go through phases where I want to spend or I need to spend, and then once I start, I can't stop. So it's one of those areas of my life that I definitely need help with. But I'm getting the help that I need because my brother's actually really good about these things. So as I still, independently of my mom and dad, try really hard to make my own way in the world, I am grateful for the fact that I've had the opportunity to live in the West and had the opportunity to live outside of the home and learn for myself what I'm good and not good at, so that if anyone is brave enough to ever get into a relationship with me, I know that I can take care of myself and take care of them as well. And when the need comes, I know that I have to have these conversations about money, and I don't have to worry about, how they will feel or what is okay and not okay, appropriate, not appropriate. And we can just have a flat out conversation and be honest about everything, because truly communication is where most of the breakdowns happen. So when I came back to Singapore, what I realized is not only was I very grateful for that time and space where I got to be myself, where I got to run my own household, I also had a tough time assimilating back into living under my mother's roof, living under my mother's rules. And that was really difficult for me because I had already stretched my wings a little bit. So now you're asking me to go back to who I was when you had me in your house last, which means backtrack 10 years, right? Where I was still in high school and living with you. And the person I was back then no longer fits your rules and regulations. I'm able to, I'm of a drinking age. I can go out with my friends if I wanted to. I do have a child and I am responsible, but if I need to let loose, then I need to let loose. So it was difficult for me to reassimilate into my mother's house. But more than that, I realized that the conversation I had to have with my mother was more about the fact that no, I'm not defying you on purpose. I am simply looking for the amount of space that I've grown accustomed to. Funny thing is, when I was married, it wasn't a problem for her how I ran my life. But when I'm unmarried, or a divorce for that matter, and I'm coming back home, it suddenly goes back to, okay, default setting, you're an Indian female in a Hindu culture in an Asian country, you can't do this, this, and this. It would be inappropriate. People will look at you funny. People will judge you. People, will bring up your reputation and your family's reputation, all of those things. All of those things would be brought into question. Your character, your values, all of these things. So it was difficult for me, and I had a really tough time getting my mother to see my point of view. And actually, more than my mother, my grandmother, because we all lived in the same house. So she definitely did not understand what it was for me to want to go out at night to the club. It wasn't okay for me to go drinking ever because I'm female and, I can be taken advantage of. And she didn't trust that I could take care of myself. So for those of you out there who have had the privilege of living overseas for a little while, studying overseas for a little while, and you find yourself back home trying to reassimilate or try to reconcile both sides of you. So there's a side of you that knows how to run your life in a foreign country by yourself, manage your own rules, manage your own time, manage your own finances, come back home, and suddenly it's the way it was way back when, right? They have not changed their idea of you or their expectations of you, even though you've grown and matured, and they want you to do things the way they did them all over again, and it's kind of restricting you. It's kind of belittling you at the same time, almost like, I don't trust you to do this. And yeah, you might have lived in a foreign country, but I don't trust that you can do it here. So for those of you going through that, right, are struggling with that particular situation, especially now this year during COVID, where you had no choice but to sit around and listen to your parents, I want to offer this instead. Perhaps you asking for space or asking for the ability to be a little bit more independent is offensive to them because they suddenly feel like you don't need them. It could manifest in many different ways, and I'm not saying I know exactly what you're going through in your household, but hear me out on this. What if they're afraid that you have a lot of Western ideas and you're about to ruin the family name by asking for independence? What if instead of asking for independence, which in their eyes is kind of a vague concept, they don't know what that means, it's open to interpretation, they get to run wild with their imagination on that one. Perhaps instead of asking for independence, perhaps you can tell them exactly what your independence means. For example, if you were to say, when I come home at night, I need 2 hours to myself so I can unwind, and then I will be back to it, in the family room, hanging out with you guys, having dinner or whatever, and I'm happy to be participating in family events. If you were to say that, that's something that's quantifiable. They can set a clock to 2 hours once you get home, right? And that also means that they know exactly what to expect. It's almost like learning to manage their expectations. Maybe something else is, okay, I need to pay my own bills, right? And they're probably very happy for you to take on your own bills, but that also means that if you're paying your own bills, you're making your own money, which whatever money you have left over after you pay your bills and put into savings, please put into savings, whatever money you have left over, they have no say over, which means if I want to buy something extravagant for myself, that's on me to figure out and manage the money. And if I can't afford it or can't afford it, can or cannot afford the item that I want to buy, that's up to me to figure that out. So that might be something else that's quantifiable. It's not saying that, hey, you know what, you can't tell me what to do. This is my life. I'm grown. It's more like, I'm worried that I won't be able to manage my finances. So yes, I want to pay my own bills. I want to pay my own phone bill, but I also would like the opportunity to make a couple of mistakes at home, which means if I want to spend money on alcohol, if I want to buy a PS5, if I want to buy the latest iPhone, it's up to me to figure out how to afford it and to make sure that I have money left over after. So I don't ask you guys for help, but I learn to manage my own way. So those are quantifiable examples, right? That means they understand exactly what it is that you're asking for. And when you ask like that, in a specific manner for what you want for your independence, they can possibly have a discussion with you about what that actually means. Financially independent, right? That means that you know how to manage your money. So in the event, at some point, if you get married and you have to manage someone else's spending habits too, you know what it takes. You've made the mistakes yourself. You know how quickly things can go badly if you're not careful about your money management. And then when somebody else's habits come into play as well, you know exactly what you specifically need in order for you to feel like you're in control of your finances. That means you can teach them what you need and how to love you when it comes to money. So all of these things are possibilities for you to ask for what you want in such a way that does not offend the person you're asking from, your parents, right? And they can possibly see that a little bit of Western influence is not actually a bad thing. You're not going to turn into a demon or go out prostituting or anything. It's not going to turn you into some loose, woman with no morals or no scruples or whatever. It's more like, okay, I know what I need to do to survive because I've had to do it on my own before. Now that I'm home, will you help me figure out how to do it here in Singapore, in a different country, within, my house rules and everything, so that I can maintain my own financial independence? Now, for those of you who are female and who are getting pressure about marriage, I would like to offer this as well. If you can sit down with your mother and talk to her about what she experienced as a new bride and slowly learn to manage finances within her marriage, you could possibly see openings for why you need to remind her that she struggled and you don't want to struggle when you're married. You'd rather struggle before you get married so you can be independent and know what to do. So you have a couple of answers so you're actually able to support your husband once that time comes and you have to get married. These are ways and means for you to learn to run your own life without being so in your face with your parents, and allowing them the ability to help you based on their own experiences, like share, to bond over this kind of situation. I'm pretty sure at some point, all of our mothers were not ready to get married and they had no choice of the matter. They had to do what they had to do. And then it was like, throw them in the deep end and see if they figure out how to swim, because suddenly they have their own house and they're in charge of cooking and they're in charge of, paying bills and making sure this other person's health is, in a decent state. Like, there's a lot to suddenly consider when you jump into a marriage. So I want to offer you all this small piece, this small glimpse into my life, the things that I can see, the conversations that I've had along the way, because I don't ever want you guys to feel like you have no choice. I don't ever want you guys to keep quiet and hope that they figure it out on their own. But because you didn't open your mouth, you are now suffering in silence, and that's just the worst place to be. So if you have any questions, drop them down below. If you want to talk to me, please contact me via DM. But know that there is a way to ask for what you want without offending anybody, even though they may be uncomfortable with the fact that you're asking in the first place because you've never done it before. But it is okay. It is rational and practical. It is a very good, strong skill set for you to develop as a female. And for you men out there, yes, for you as well, right? For you to learn how to live on your own and to manage a paycheck over the course of a month with bills involved and stuff. That's all very, very important life skills. And I want you to know that, yes, your parents don't want you to suffer. And yes, your parents want you to be taken care of. And marriage used to be the way you did that. You pass your child off into the next household so that they are now set up for life with a person who has a job and you can share finances together. That sounded like a good idea back then. But nowadays, when divorces are rampant and the number one reason for people breaking up is actually money, right? The second one is infidelity or not having your needs met. If we could prevent some of that stuff with a little foresight and a little bit of training ahead of time, why the hell not? You hear what I'm saying? So I hope this helped you guys. Let me know what you think. And in the meantime, take good care of yourselves and follow your gut. If you think you need a little bit of space to figure out your life, then you ask for that the best way you know how. And hopefully, with a little luck and a little support from the universe, you get what you're asking for and you're able to learn the skills that you desperately need. All right, you guys, I love you and I'll catch you again soon. Bye.